Our scripture lesson this morning is from the book of Luke, chapter 8. You may follow along on the back of your program in the insert. Jesus and his disciples sailed to the Gerasenes land, which is across the lake from Galilee. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, a certain man met him, a man from the city who was possessed with demons. For a long time he had lived among the tombs, naked and homeless. When he saw Jesus, he shrieked and fell down before him. Then he shouted, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." He said this because Jesus had already commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had been taken possession of him, so he would be bound with leg irons and chains and placed under guard. But he would break his restraints, and the demon would force him into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had entered him. They pleaded with him not to order them to go back into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding in the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs. Jesus gave them permission, and the demons left the man and entered the pigs. The herd rushed down the cliff into the lake and drowned. When those who tended the sheep saw what happened, they ran away and told the story in the city and in the countryside. People came to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and found the man with whom the demons had gone. He was sitting at Jesus' feet, fully dressed and completely sane. They were filled with awe. Those people who had actually seen what had happened told them how the demon-possessed man had been delivered. Then everyone gathered from the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave their area because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and returned across the lake. The man from whom the demons had gone begged to come along with Jesus as one of his disciples. Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell the story of what God has done for you." So he went throughout the city proclaiming what Jesus had done for him. This is God's good news for all of God's people. Thanks be to God.
Let's bow our heads in prayer. Lord, I ask for your wisdom in these words of mine and the grace in their hearing. Your grace today, Lord. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Now, I need to clear up a misunderstanding that might be going on, right from the beginning. We're in a sort of a long sermon series on new places for new people, and that sort of lends itself to, Rick's going to ask us to invite our neighbor to come to church, kind of a moment. Well, this ain't that. Courageous invitations, certainly, yeah, I get it. You risk maybe being rejected, or maybe they think you're some sort of religious wacko, or, that sort of thing, and maybe that's courageous at a certain level. But that's not what I'm talking about this morning. I'm talking about things that take real courage because they take real investment. You see, that invitation for your neighbor to come join you in church, that doesn't take a whole lot out of you. There's not much skin in the game with that. You can pretty much, do a toss-off invitation and say, hey, why don't you come to church with me? And a lot of us have done that, and that's great. I hope you do that all the time. I hope you do that with just about everybody you meet. But it doesn't take a whole lot of courage, because you don't invest a whole lot in that. If they say no, that's okay. That's not a big deal. And if they say yes, that's fine too. I'll see you in church, and we hope to see him that coming Sunday. But this is not about inviting people to come to church. That is as easy to do as it is to turn down. Neither of you, the asker or the askee, is personally invested. We're talking about invitations that are something that's a little different than that really requires courage. So let's get to why we're actually in this process at all. A couple of weeks ago, I started a sermon series, this sermon series. And the first session we talked about, the first sermon was about insiders and outsiders. We started by looking at the insiders and outsiders and how we are those people, both of those people at some points or another. There are people that you feel like, you're an insider, and folks that will look at you, as an insider, as, oh, they go to that church in town and they think they're all that. There are groups that you will feel like you're an outsider with, and quite frankly, if I go to a church that's not my home church, I almost feel a little bit like an outsider. And this Sunday, in fact, I was talking to Johnny a couple of minutes ago, this Sunday is the first Sunday for a whole lot of brand new and senior pastors, folks all the way through the career path. But this is their first Sunday in their new church in a whole lot of places. I guarantee that most of those men and women feel, although they have no doubt been wonderfully welcomed and really, people try and make them feel at home, they still feel like a little bit of an outsider. Anybody that has served in a rural congregation knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because quite frankly, you walk into this congregation, I've been here for 7 years, I still feel like I'm kind of an outsider. I'm still the new guy. A lot of those times when we feel like we're the outsider, and sometimes we feel like we've been shunned. We've been made to feel like we are not part of the crowd. Certainly not part of the in-group. And that was the first one. How we, as creating new groups, new places for new people, give folks that are in that spot, in that place, a new place for them to be and for them to become that core group so that they can feel that sense of growing identity. And that was the first sermon. The second sermon last week, just real quickly, was about making room. We talked about tidying up, and we did the Marie Kondo thing. That thing, that person, that moment, that process that we do, doesn't give us joy. And the things that don't give us joy perhaps need to be let go. But what that does is it creates space for new things to happen. And sometimes we look at those things that have been here for a while and we ask them, do you give us joy? And that's that moment when God can breathe into those old, very traditional moments and breathe new life into them. And so we had that image of the valley of the dry bones that Ezekiel gives in his prophecy. And now we're here today. This moment, this third Sunday in the New Places for New People series, and it's time to talk about making connections with others. Because quite frankly, we turn down those fast invitations all the time, all day long. I don't know if you have a cell phone, you've probably started receiving telemarketer calls on your cell phone. I made the mistake of answering an ad about student loans because, I still have student loans. That's what happens when you have a midlife crisis late in life and you're still paying on it. So I said, I'm interested in maybe, talking about some payment plans and stuff. And every single student loan provider and bank and everybody is calling me now. Is it easy to turn those guys down? Yeah. Is it annoying? You bet. It's easy to turn down those things, those telemarketers, the spam, even the legit advertising. There's no investment, and quite frankly, they're not interested in us as human beings. They don't know us. They're only interested in their agenda, is in their agenda. Instead, the people that we really listen to are the people that we trust. And we know that they have our best interest at heart. Now, some of these individuals, and I want to kind of take these people off the table for just a minute. There are lots of sermons that I could preach about police and medical providers and airline pilots and the people that put their lives on the line to make sure that we live safe and that we get to our destination and that we get through the day. And they truly are, we listen to those folks pretty well because we trust them with our lives. You can pretty much see the courage in their eyes, and what they do is something that matters a great deal. But these aren't the folks that I'm talking about right now. The ones that I'd like to kind of zero in on this morning are the people that don't necessarily risk life and limb. They risk their hearts. They allow us to get close enough to see who they really are. And if we're brave enough to do the same, that relationship starts to blossom and grow. And what we do for each other gives us life and hope and a room to heal, a room to live. But I'm not even going to talk about those folks necessarily, because that's kind of easy. You know, the people that we know and we like, and quite frankly, the folks that are here this morning in this room right now, you know, I'd trust just about any of you with my life. Because I've come to know you, and I trust you, and I hope you trust me a little bit. But that's not the relationship I want to talk about either. You know, Jesus said that in the 5th chapter of Matthew, in the 46th verse, we do that kind of stuff naturally with the people that we know and like, we share an affinity with, and so identity with, and you know, that's sort of the low-hanging fruit of relationships, because those are easy. And Jesus said that even the tax collectors can get that stuff right. See, this is why the series started off 2 weeks ago talking about insiders and outsiders. We're called to reach out to the ones who are on the outside. Because there are people lined up to talk to the popular kids. But the folks that have been shunned, who are a little off, who are a little awkward, you don't have a whole lot of friends, that's where God calls us. As Christians, we're called to do the heavy lifting. You see, this is where the real courage comes in. This isn't that easy invitation, maybe handing out brochures door to door. Maybe that's a little scarier for you. No, I'm talking about something that takes real courage. That courageous invitation to get to know that individual and to let them get to know you. Two things happen when we do that, and they are God-breathed moments. You discover what that individual really needs because you finally stopped for just a moment and listened to them. Now, coming as a 17-year recovering social worker, I spent a whole lot of that time with white knight complex, thinking that I could ride into a bad situation and discern exactly what that individual needed and do that thing and then ride off into the sunset. And someone would ask, who was that masked man? It wasn't long before I learned better. The only way to really get to know what somebody needs is to really get to know somebody. Because any relationship will develop something that is that relationship, that communication, where you start to understand that person. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're making your best decision for what you would do in that particular circumstance, and that's not the case. Because the first thing is that you discover what they really need. The second thing is they trust you enough to listen. The courageous invitation here is to enter into a relationship, messy and inconvenient and wonderful and affirming relationships. Now, let's talk about the scripture that Johnny just read a couple of minutes ago. And it's just an observation, and please, don't take this the wrong way, and cover the kids' ears for just a moment. Okay, just don't listen to this, guys. Yeah, okay, good. Jesus was cheating with this one. Now, there's a little piece in this scripture where it sounds like Jesus looks like he's just got off the boat and he's confronted by, okay, kids, you can stop now. Seriously, I wasn't serious. It sounds like Jesus just walked off the boat and he's confronted by this guy for the first time. But if you read the scripture a little bit deeper, you start to understand that somehow or another, these two may have known each other, because it literally says that Jesus had already been trying to, or talking to this guy about his demons, about what was going on. That's how the guy, the crazy man on that lake shore knew what Jesus was about. Either way, whatever's going on, Jesus knew this guy. And from Jesus' perspective, already knew what was in this crazy man's heart. So Jesus did exactly what this man needed, and he healed him completely. Now, newsflash, not a one of us in this room is Jesus. We get to represent it in wonderful times, and that's another sermon, but what we have to do is we have to build that relationship. We have to get with that person and understand that person and communicate with that individual to build a deepening relationship. And it is a step that we cannot skip. To know what the other truly needs separates a well-meaning but, quite frankly, usually off-base person from a true friend. And what else is Jesus asking us to do? He says that we're supposed to love one another as he has loved us. And he knows us completely. We can't skip that step like Jesus can. We have to enter into a relationship with one another, because that's how we love completely like Jesus does. Jesus says, love one another as he has loved us. The 13th chapter of John, the 34th verse. Real relationships are hardwired with a need to grow closer, to dive deeper, and to do more, and to risk more. Our courageous invitation isn't about coming to church. That may be part of it, somewhere along the road. But it is to engage in a caring relationship with someone who really needs it. Like I said, not necessarily popular kids, though. You scratch a popular kid and you'll find a batch of insecurities like anybody else. We are called to reach out to those that society has forgotten, thrown away, abandoned, or shunned. In turn, this is how we learn to be disciples of Jesus Christ. We find these moments as means of grace, a way to experience God. Now, you may not feel like you have the skill set to confront a large, naked, crazy man with multiple personalities. Could I see the hands of people that feel like they've got that level of training? Because we need to talk. I've got some customers for you. This is not the kind of guy that you would necessarily ask to come to coffee, with you, just to sit down and chat down at the cafe down the street. But I will tell you that God has equipped you and this church to do the work to build the kingdom one heart at a time in a way that fits. Now, a very wise man taught me a long, long time ago that just this one point, and I've probably shared this with you guys in the past, our call to service, our point at which we can connect with someone is the intersection of our ability to give and someone else's need to receive. It's that moment. And it's not the same for everybody, it's not the same in every circumstance. It is very unique and very specific. Now, there are lots of agencies that were set up at the annual conference. We trolled a lot of the booths that were up there. We had the Methodist men's group that Johnny was working with. There were a lot of other really wonderful agencies that were talking about their program. But there was one that really stood out to me because it connected with what I think is our ability to serve as a church and as Christians. You see, I'm pretty sure that we can throw a party. You think we can? Come on. I've seen y'all cook chicken and dumplings until you're blue in the face and serve hundreds of people, throughout these 2 little rooms back in the back here. And then there's the pumpkin fest, and then there's the church auction, and then there's all this other stuff that we do. We can throw one heck of a party. That's our superpower. We do the heck out of that. But sometimes it's hard to bring people in, especially kids, when we're just making an invitation. But we can throw a party. My heart has broken for the last several years when Ruth and a few others here have tried to pull together a birthday party for Jesus thing. And we get a couple of 3 kids come, and it's been cute and fun, but they're mainly our kids, and haven't really reached out into the community much. And our kids have a great time. That's fun. But we can throw an amazing party. It is part of how this church is warm and welcoming. So how do we connect with somebody that really needs what we can give? I was talking in Bible study just this last week, and so the rest of the sermon is mainly the fault and sort of the encouragement of the Bible study group. Angel Tree, a program of prison fellowship, works with prison chaplains during the summer. In fact, right now, they're in the middle of interviewing and connecting with inmates who have families on the outside. Those chaplains talk to those individuals, and they find the families that have that need, where there are kids in the home, especially little kids, around Carter's age or so, or maybe even, Keeley and Clark. But you want to talk about cast-offs. People that the rest of the community would judge or would just as soon avoid. They live in a home where there is shame and struggle because they know that the rest of the culture judges their parent that they love. Yeah, some of these folks have done things that they're now paying for. Those chaplains identify families with children, and they match those children up with churches like ours. One church member, serving as a coordinator, contacts the families that are here. Families have already been contacted and told that someone was going to be in touch with them, so the ground has been paved. And the coordinator out of a church contacts those families and confirms that the information is okay and talks about what the kids need. Gets to know those families, and you see that starts to develop that relationship, that thing that we're supposed to be about. That coordinator then brings that list back to the church. The church members pick a child, buy something out of that wish list, $20 max, and we're real serious about that limit. Because we have to make it kind of even across the board for other programs where kids are going to know. And then we have the option. Either throw a party, which, here's our superpower. Or if we feel the need or somebody can't make it to the party, we can go to the family's home and deliver those gifts in person. And if anybody does that, I'm with you by your side. In this county, I'll tell you about St. Francis first, next door to us, 120 kids, fall into this category in St. Francis County. In Washington County, the number is a little more manageable, about 20 to 25. But these are kids that are in an area. I talked to one of the national coordinators a couple of days ago, and I said, well, are there any other churches that are doing this? And she said, in your area? No. There hasn't been anyone in this area that has served this population since 2013. They still keep the stats, they still have the moment, they still connect with the inmates, and the inmates say, yeah, if someone could just, I wish I could be there, I miss my family, I know I've done wrong. Angel Tree is the only agency with access to the names and the information on interested families. And I've got to tell you, a few years ago in another town with another church, we did these Christmas parties for about 3 years running. Well, we had just got the program started down there with that church. And the families that come to this and the kids that are there, remember that God moment I talked about earlier when, about in the parade handing out just water bottles to people? Imagine giving a gift to a child for their incarcerated parent. With all of the freight and the baggage, the emotional stuff that goes with that, imagine giving that gift to that child when they thought that their parent had just forgotten them or done something and it resulted in them not being there. And there's blame and there's questions and there's all sorts of stuff. Imagine the look on those kids' faces, and that's what I saw for 3 years running. And to work with those families, it was an amazing moment. Now, I've talked with folks about trying to reach out to people in the community, and one of the things that I've heard time and time again is that we just don't know anybody who's in that kind of need. Well, now you do. I wouldn't know where to start. Now you do. You see, church, this is where our ability to serve intersects with a need. A child that has done nothing wrong is paying for it. And we have the opportunity to be Jesus in that child's life, right here in this area. Now, I asked the coordinator if we could, pick the families that were, or at least connect with families that were nearby, that were within reach, and connect with them that way, because it would be just logistically easier for not just us, but for the families to maybe come to the party and maybe stay connected or get involved with our community here. And she said, absolutely. They can sort out the ones that are real close and nearby. And so it's probably not going to be, in all of Washington County, 25 kids spreads out over a lot of ground. But so that's my pitch. We're called to reach out to the outsiders. Jesus gave us an example of reaching out to one of the scariest outsiders that is in the Bible. It's one of those monster stories that's there. And we are called to reach out in Christ's name. Not to some large, deranged man who scares us to death, but to a little child. I think we can do this. If you're interested, we need the coordinator. We need somebody to step up to the plate. We'll say that they'll make the phone calls and do the coordination and make this happen. I won't lie, that's a courageous invitation on our part, because I'm asking you to give your heart. I want you to pray about this, and I want you to call me this week, unless you just feel led to connect with me after the service. If this isn't your thing, that's fine. That may be not where your ability intersects with this need, and I get that, that's fine. But start looking for some way, some need in this world where your abilities connect, how God has equipped you specifically and individually to reach out and to be Jesus for somebody who's in need. If you already have that kind of ministry and you have that moment and you're doing it, then God bless you. I pray for strength for your journey. But I ask for you to pray. Because the communion table that we have in back of us right now is an example of how we're supposed to reach out, how we're supposed to be church, because it is open. And there is no one that will be refused here. We're called to be church. Let's bow our heads. Gracious and loving God, I pray for that person that right now is struggling with the call on their heart to do this. I pray that you will work with them and in them and through them. And that if it is the right thing, the right moment, that you would give them the grace to step up. I pray for those that have felt it in their hearts that they might be the ones that might be able to reach out and buy a gift for a kid they have never seen before. And lean into that relationship that you call us to be in. That grace. That presence. I pray that you would help this church find that yet again another ministry out of all the things that this church does. This one more moment to reach out to children that are nearby, our neighbors. And in your name and presence, heal them. We ask this in your Son's name.